Times change. Teams can tyrannize their opposition and acquire glory time and time again. But time itself often ravages that glory and changes how we see the victor, if we even see them as that anymore. Players inevitably fall into the same trap. We know them as dominators of a league that isn't ready for them, and in time, we know them as a relic that same league has left behind. Franchises themselves come and go, bringing communities together in union for a shared love, and eventually orphaning them all the same. But sometimes, even though a road had ended, the memory of how it was traveled remains. Though players fade and retire, though the pride of victory cools, though the teams come and go, since history is fact, what they leave behind lasts forever. For one franchise, even though its existence was fraught with ridicule and controversy, in one spring long ago, they left an indelible mark on NHL history. The Coyotes were fortunate to even be playing in this season at all. Over the offseason, a council vote agreed to keep them in Arizona for the 11-12 season, but only in an interim capacity. Many thought the team would relocate to Winnipeg, but that burden fell on the Thrashers. So they were kind of playing with house money. Again, this questionable future of the Coyotes in the desert was 13 years ago. The Coyotes finished the season atop their division, which is nice, but with 97 points, that was only good for 6th in the conference. But the way the playoffs used to be seeded, each division winner got a seat in the top 3, so they were the 3rd seed. Although their trajectory had been a little frustrating to say the least. Dating back to the franchise's start in Winnipeg, in the 19 years since the alignment into East and West conferences, the Coyotes hadn't won a playoff series. They had a spattering of appearances in the late 90s with sub-500 teams and didn't win any of them. More recently, in the prior 2 seasons, the Coyotes broke and then sniffed the 100-point plateau, but fell each time to the Red Wings in 2 series that were night and day in how good they were. But that's not to downplay their spot in the dance this year. They ended the season 9-2-4, including a 5-game win streak to barely outpace the Kings and Sharks. And here they were, facing a Chicago Blackhawks team that was A, 2 years removed from winning a Stanley Cup, and B, 4 points better than them despite being 3 places behind them in the standings. They were led in scoring by the Wizard, Ray Whitney. His nickname described his ability to make plays wherever he was, and his agility despite his smaller stature, but it could just as easily be applied to how under the radar he was his entire career. He had just cracked the 1,000-point mark near the end of the season, and was a 10-time 20-goal scorer across 1,300-plus games. Hall of Fame. As good as he was a playmaker, the team's sniper was Radim Vrbata, who pounded home a career-high 37 goals that season, and a league-leading 12 game winners. Across his career, he also largely aged like wine. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Coyotes' equivalent of Michael Jordan, Shane Doan. Not really the skill guy like Whitney and Vrbata, more of a physical type, but he still put up the better part of a point per game on this Coyotes team. He won the Marc Messier Award for Leadership in 2012, and that really says everything you need to know about him. He was a great leader and a great competitor, and he had a great career. One of the more universally liked players in all the league. Keith Yandel anchored the Coyotes' D that season, with an honorable mention to the nascent Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He'd taken that spot of the first defensive option on D from Adrian Aucoin over the past 2 seasons, the latter of whom was in the twilight of his career. Lastly, Mike Smith. The most Mike Smith to ever Mike Smith. Known for being one of the best puck-handling goalies, even though he does have his boo-boos, he had a career year in 2012, leading the league in goals saved above average and goalie point share, whatever that means, I have no idea. He had 8 shutouts, a .930 save percentage, and a 2.21 GAA, and that didn't even get him a Vezina nomination. That's how good the best goalies were in 2012. The Coyotes lineup is really a who's who of defensively responsible forwards. Martin Hanzal, Laurie Korpikoski, Boyd Gordon, Taylor Pyatt, Kyle Chipchura, and Antoine Vermette. Between those 6, there were 15 seasons with Selke placements, and their defense was even more soundly anchored by the very excellent Mike Smith. One goalie that wasn't very excellent in 2012 was Corey Crawford. This was his first full season as a starter, but he suffered a sophomore slump this year that would hold to be his career worst. But that being said, he was easily the most underrated part of the Hawks' future Cup wins. I would say that he and Tuukka Rask are the most underrated goalies of the 2010s. Now, Blackhawks fatigue is still a thing for some people even in 2024, so I'll skip over Kane, Taves, Seabrook, Keith. All you need to know if you don't know them is that they are very, very good and were very, very good for a long time. So I'll pick up the tab for non-superstars, starting with Patrick Sharp. He was a very well-rounded, skilled, versatile player with a solid scoring touch, and he could have been on most teams' first line were it not for Jonathan Taves taking that spot. So Sharp played more on the wing. 20-year-old Nick Leddy was, nay is, he's still playing, a great skater, a mobile, puck-moving defenseman that burst onto the scene in 2012, averaging over 22 minutes per game. Want to hear something funny? This season, 12 years later, he averaged 17 seconds more per game. Finally, Johnny Oduya. Now, you may be like, what? But Johnny Oduya was a late-season acquisition who instantly also got over 22 minutes of ice time per night. I've heard multiple things about him. Some scouting sites say he's a defensive defenseman, but I heard Joe Micheletti say he was a riverboat gambler. I have no idea what to make of him, but you'll notice him in this series. Just you wait. Unlike the Coyotes, the Blackhawks were something of a perennial contender. They ended a near half-century championship drought in 2010 after possibly the best finals of the last 2 decades or so, and followed that up with one of the best first-round series of the same span, which they lost. And all of their emergent stars were still very young, so there was no question of the window closing anytime soon. But the bar they set for themselves was high, so when their power play went from 4th to 25th, and Taves missed the last quarter of the season with a concussion, it was only a setback, but nonetheless, it was one of those dreaded talking points coming into the postseason. The Blackhawks weren't a team of the future. They were the champions of yesterday and the contenders of now. They wanted it all, and they knew they could get it. The Coyotes were primarily a team that collected graying veterans, but coach Dave Tippett was able to, as one writer put it, draw blood from the proverbial stone enough to make the Coyotes the actual favorites in this series by a razor-thin margin. But as happens so often in the playoffs, a razor-thin margin is as good as one that's rink-wide. The Coyotes and their fans went absolutely balls to the wall in the first minute or so.
Bowling quickly back in over the line, looking around, he's got a man to the front, a stop that time, and a rebound is batted away by Smith. With home ice here to try to keep your emotions in check. Big hit that time, Yandel, as he took a run at Victor Stolberg and lit up Stolberg by Derek.
But life is cruel.
So now the Blackhawks with their best pressure of the opening period. Jonathan Taves in behind the net. Can't give him a lot of room as Taves will work it towards the front. And a score that time as Taves is able to put it home. And Chicago's taking a 1-0 lead.
Life is cruel because sometimes goalies make incredible athletic saves on change-ups, and sometimes they let in goals like that. But hey, they serve a very important purpose.
Martin Hansel's had a pretty effective shift here for the Coyotes. Unfortunately, they can't get it outside the zone. And the puck back to the front. It's underneath Smith, and he makes the save. In behind the net, Kane has it. Tries to pull wraparound to the front. It's loose in the crease, and it's covered up by Mike Smith.
While the Coyotes owned the physicality in the first period, the Blackhawks owned the lion's share of the play and the lone goal. Not least of all to one of Crawford's few saves that he had to make.
Shot! Oh, what a save! Crawford on Hansel with 2.3.
The start to the second was a lot more even, but with fewer chances going either way, as the adrenaline wore off for both teams.
Into the corner, Bickle in behind the net to the front. It's underneath Smith, and he got it.
Around the same time the Coyotes rediscovered their hitting, they also found their scoring.
High. The Hawks have collapsed real low.
Shot on and a deflection caught by Crawford. Chicago wanted a 2-minute men on the ice penalty. They won't get it.
Well, they want to freeze this puck is what they want.
In front, they score! Taylor Pyatt has tied it at 1. And the house goes crazy.
This is such an avoidable goal against for the Blackhawks. Sean O'Donnell, in his second to last ever game, with no stick, played the puck to the net smartly to get it frozen, but Nicklas Hjalmarsson plays it away from Crawford on O'Donnell's side. Damon Langkow and Taylor Pyatt made him pay. But lest the Coyotes get too complacent, God threw them a curveball.
This one bounces in behind the net. They had to wait for it. It's right in the crease, and we're going to whistle in a stoppage.
Here's Rafi Torres, And Hossa almost gets caught in the train tracks. Heads up.
He moved a little bit, and Rafi, that was textbook on his part because he led with the shoulder, didn't leave his feet.
Didn't stick his knee out.
No.
That is good stuff.
It took the Blackhawks over half a period to get a shift of truly sustained pressure, but the Coyotes held the fort. They may not have even allowed a shot on that shift.
Going all the way back through center.
Thanks to an exceedingly rare full-rink delay of game field goal by Patrick Sharp, the Coyotes were gifted an abbreviated 5-on-3, and everything was there but the finish. They wouldn't have to wait too long, though.
He sent it wide.
Wanted to tee that thing up.
Rafi Torres has it, brings it over the line, thought about it. In front, a shot, it's in! It's in! Antoine Vermette has made it 2-1.
Man, there are some goofy physics here, but the screen from Hjalmarsson ensured that there was no way Crawford was going to see this puck. 2-1.
To Seabrook, stopped, and a rebound is there. Sharp, trying to work it to the front. It's in the crease, they couldn't get it past.
Oh, look at the Coyotes clogging up that net.
Seabrook, over to Sharp. Sharp, stopped that time by Smith, and a standing O down at the Coyotes' end.
One shot was all that stood in the way of a tie or a 2-goal lead.
Comes in, he shoots and a stop.
Not that the Blackhawks' power play was any threat. They had so many miscommunications for whatever reason. As the penalty got killed off, even the play-by-play was riding high the approaching prospect of a Coyotes victory, celebrating every little win.
Steer it around, high off the glass, forget about it, all the way down the length of the ice.
With another late power play, the Blackhawks owned their zone time, but again didn't get many actual chances. Precious time was eaten off the clock, bit by bit. No one created space either way. The Blackhawks couldn't hold the zone with Crawford pulled and a minute left in their Game 1 hopes.
Kane has it. Kane trying to go to the front. Kane looking around. Big curl. Kane with a shot. Off the bar. Rebound. They score with 14.2 to go.
And just like that, all their offensive miscues get reset to 0 by way of some great vision from Kane and a fortunate bounce to Seabrook.
Game is headed to overtime. No shootouts in the postseason, so this could only be the beginning.
Like all good playoff overtime hockey, it ensured you would not escape the night without getting a heart attack.
About the puck.
Stahlberg drops it. Chance Sharp and a stop by Smith.
Incredible, no lust.
Hossa steals it over the line. A shot and a stop that time by Smith. Net letting it go. Whitney has it. Whitney! Klesla right through the crease. And a shot wide that time by Klesla. They work it to the front. They score! Deflected in front. Marty Hansel. Series lead to the Coyotes. 1-0.
Hansel's OT goal gave them the win at evens, snapping a 24-game goal drought for him. A win is a win is a win, but there were definitely some things to work on for the Coyotes. Their power play hadn't scored on the Blackhawks all season, and they really only played 40 minutes, allowing Chicago to dictate play in the third and force overtime. Mike Smith had come up clutch just as much as Phoenix's unlikely scorers had, but there was an onslaught coming from the young Blackhawks that would put even his elite mettle to the test. The skate was on the other foot to start Game 2, as the Blackhawks were the ones threatening early.
Patrick Sharp looking to drive the net. Sharp right into the forehand. Who to save by Smith. Penalty, Phoenix. Here's Seabrook taking a look. Along Clipper. And the save. Smith. Rebound loose. Hacked that by Sharp. Oduya leaves it for Bolin. He shoots one. And the save. Smith. Rebound. They score. Picked out of midair and batted home by Brian Bickle.
Brian Bickle had just completed his second full season in the league, suffering a noticeable sophomore slump, but he showed right there why the Blackhawks loved him. He was a big presence with soft hands. Once the Coyotes settled, though, they were more than ready to counterpunch.
For the one-timer, block save! Klesla, Kruger steps into the zone, Bickle to the net, there's the pass, Bickle right in! Total save by Smith! Doan took it away from Keith, centering, here's the shot, they score! What a play by Shane Doan and Rafi Torres, who has been brilliant in the first 4 periods of this series, has tied the game. Missing Pyatt with a pass. He tapped it forward, got away from Letty. Paya driving, trying to center, open side of the net, and good check job.
A pretty bad goalie interference call against Jonathan Toews gave the Coyotes a very fortunate opportunity to take their first lead of the game.
Ekman Larson, Yandles fakes a one-timer, now tries, he scores! Keith Yandle, a 57-footer, and the Coyotes on the power play take the lead.
A net front redirect by Antoine Vermette gave Phoenix the lead, and Chicago clearly got the tough side of that goalie interference call. But the way they finished the period was very lackluster and head-hanging. They were lucky it never got to 4-1 to end the intermission.
Right to the goal, and a stuff shot stopped by Crawford.
They had 17 shots in the first period, but honestly, you could have fooled me.
He's got it in behind. Whitney for Verbata, the shot. Oh, he just missed the far post. Pull up the ice. Keith Yandle got the line to Whitney, pulls up, dropped it in front. Here's a chance.
To get out of that funk, sometimes you just need a little luck.
Mike Smith play a lot.
And Brandon Bowling has just scored his first NHL point and goal. And Bowling has tied the game at 2.
I say luck, but I can't for 100% certain tell if this shot deflects off of Adrian Aucoin's stick. It may have just been a good shot. People have been known to score on those, you know. In short order, though, things would take a turn for the nasty and the goofy.
Smith hit by Shaw. Andrew Shaw got together with Smith, whose headgear went flying, and he's down. Or at least I guess it was his glove that went.
Now, most people would say Andrew Shaw played like a turd, and he 100% makes no effort to avoid Smith. That's a penalty. I mean, you cannot fake that kind of helmet snap. But at the same time, Smith goes down like he's been shot. I mean, he's grabbing at his face. Maybe his face mask snapping cut him, but still, it's a little much. Now, I haven't been able to time travel for years, but if I could change the call on the ice, I'd give 2 for Shaw for interference and 2 for Smith for embellishment. But the call on the ice was a 5-minute charge and a game misconduct on Shaw. Okay. Now, the Coyotes had scored on their prior power play and held the balance of the play. This was their chance to retake the lead and potentially blow the game wide open.
He gave it to Vermette. He lets it go. He scores! Corey Crawford never saw.
Poor Corey Crawford. Almost every goal to this point, he just had somebody's big butt parked in front of him, taking away all of his vision. But that's the meat and potatoes kind of thing that tends to pay off in the playoffs. Side note, but look at how the Coyotes almost never settle into a pattern on the ice. They're just skating all over the zone, seemingly without structure to their power play. How on earth was it effective so far? As for the rest of the major, it was okay for both teams. No goals either way, though, and none for the remaining balance of the second. 3-2 to start the final regulation frame. And the first half of it was a whole lot of nothing.
They got a terrific netminder, and we have played almost half of this third period. Has Mike Smith made a tough save yet?
Not that I can remember.
Nope.
And it's just basically a 1-4 check now. Just one guy putting nominal pressure on and 4 guys lined up in the neutral ice area. There's not a lot going on between the blue lines. Not a lot of room to skate or find free ice.
To try and punch through the Yotes D, the defensemen started to activate more frequently for the Hawks, but still couldn't find pay dirt. But they kept at it, all the way down to the final minute.
He fights off a check, center, Bodker, good save by Crawford. Corey Crawford, a huge stop, keeps his team alive. Osa gets back into Kane, looking to center, but a chance for Taves. The stop shot, and a save by Smith, is loose. Kane to Seabrook, half a minute, his shot is blocked. To Kane, his shot, missed the net. Rebound Vermette. Antoine Vermette failed to clear it. 15 left. In the corner, Sharp. Hawks pressing for the tying goal. Hossa centered it all the way through to Kane. Kane to Seabrook. Here it comes. Tip, they score! A redirect. 5.5 left. And the Hawks for the second straight game have tied it late.
Patrick Sharp in the net front perfectly tipped Seabrook's shot port of Mike Smith, and once again, the Blackhawks wait till the very last second to breathe life back into their hopes for a win. It was the only time in Stanley Cup playoff history that 2 last-minute tying goals were scored in back-to-back games. I will now show you every Blackhawks shot on net before the Coyotes even got one.
All right, now the draw to Chalmerson, tries a long one. Smith had a good look that time. In for Stallberg, tees it up, fires! Oh, the save by Smith. Gets away from a check, drives in, shooting. Smith rebound, and Smith a second save. He stopped Sharp, then Kruger. Goes across. Here's Rosenthal, the shot, and a save.
Not a recipe for success for the Coyotes. It almost didn't matter.
Tees it up with a blast, and a save. Crawford loose. Big scramble to the crease, and Corey Crawford, it appears, has kept it from crossing the line. The referee taking a close look.
The rebound sits on a platter for Antoine Vermette, and he just chunks what would have been his 4th goal of the series already.
Pressured by Stahlberg, he took it away, might have a 2-on-1. Stahlberg, the shot, and a save, no rebound from Smith. And Brian Bickle is just dreaming for that puck to come to him, and it never did. Following up, it's cleared to center, a chance for Ozen. He drives in to win the game, shoots, and his backhander went wide.
After this rush by Hossa, the Hawks had the Coyotes' defense pinned in the zone, reeling for almost a full minute.
Hit traffic in front to the Coyotes' Vermette. A lot of exhausted players out at the end of this shift.
Barely get off the ice, and it all started with a great rush by Marian Hossa. He wanted a penalty. He was slashed. Look at this.
Loose to Bickle. He wins the game. Brian Bickle. Victor Stahlberg kicked a clearing attempt to him. Bickle powered it home. The Hawks win, and the series is tied.
The Coyotes, namely Adrian Aucoin, had all the time in the world to get this puck controlled and out of the zone. But in one of the absolute worst exhaustion-addled plays I've ever seen, they coughed up the puck and the goal and the game. For the hit on Mike Smith, Andrew Shaw was suspended 3 games. Important to remember is that this was Brendan Shanahan's first year of doling out player suspensions, and this year marked a turning point in terms of discipline for head hits in the league. So he was clearly setting an example in his first year, which is why a hit that was, in my opinion, heavily embellished on, got a full 3-game penalty. Maybe that's unfair, but maybe our perception of what is fair when it comes to head hits is what needs changing. In any case, Smith wasn't injured and he finished the game. Lauri Korpikoski and Martin Hanzal were injured and would not play in Game 3, so Paul Bissonnette and Gilbert Brulé came in. That hit and those injuries would be the headlines for the series, for now, because it was about to get a whole lot worse.
Centering pass, Langkow in front, and Torres fires wide. Kyle Chinchura in behind the net. Stuff attempt by Bissonnette comes to Ekman Larson, and his shot is stopped by Crawford.
Biz Nasty helped draw a roughing penalty in the first few minutes by starting a scrum after the whistle. Despite his team not converting, Smith was still in the game and as sharp as ever.
Throwing, dropping it off. Kane shoots, glove save by Smith.
There was a great, unrelenting pace to Game 3. And then it all came to a screeching halt.
Coyotes would then take a 1-goal lead before Chicago tied both games late. Jamal Mayers down the left wing. Looks to cut around Morris. Mayers still controlling. Now to Lenny, and Hossa's hurt, Joe, just to your left.
Yeah, no, right down in front of me. Now they go after Torres.
Yeah, Bolin went right after Rafi Torres.
It was a hit where Hossa cut to the middle of the ice and didn't see Torres coming. And he hit him.
Rafi Torres demolished Marian Hossa with an open ice hit that, at first glance, nobody really reacted to. But looking at the replay, for starters, the hit's late. Second, he leaves his feet, and third, he gets Hossa right in the head. If he stays on his feet and doesn't load up into the hit, as you can hear someone on a hot mic suggest, then it's probably just interference for being a late hit. But he jumped and got Hossa in the head, resulting in an injury on the play. That would cost Rafi Torres, but not immediately. He was still in the game. It would cost his team too, because Torres had been really good for the Yotes to this point in the series. Supplemental discipline was coming. The only questions were, how severe would it be for him? And how severe was the injury to Hossa? Somehow, the Coyotes were the ones who came out on the man advantage. Fortunately, the first period wound down without further incident, but there was a palpable disgust amongst the Blackhawk fans that cast a pall over United Center.
As far as missing the net, that's too much.
Kane shoots, he doesn't miss the net. Patrick Kane gets the Blackhawks a 1-0 1 lead.
As good as Mike Smith was, nobody can stop deflections like that. Andrew Brunette and his old man shins redirected Kane's wrister past him, and for the third straight game, the Hawks had scored first. Perhaps a bit timid because of the guilt of the hit, the Coyotes largely shrunk away from the Hawks for the majority of the second.
Great chance for Michael Frolik. Here's Frolik again. Moves to the net. Oh, big save by Smith.
Neither team had led by more than one goal in the series yet, and the Blackhawks surely knew they needed more to even start to consider breathing easy. But the Coyotes played just as hard-nosed as they always had.
Taves. Tries to come out in front. Keith fires off the goalpost. Off the left post behind Smith. And his second period will come to an end. So the Blackhawks will begin the third on the power play. Late shot by Taves. And Ekman Larson lets it know that the shot came late. Kane in there as well.
And Sharp and Smith involved as well. They've had work throughout this game, and now Smith gets his stick up as he goes over to Patrick Sharp.
Return. Coyotes on a power play for just over a minute. Keith shoots short-handed, deflected wide by Kruger. Bullock hemmed in by O'Coin. Here's Whitney, dropping it off. Shot by Klesla, saved by Crawford. Hjalmarsson down low, and a beautiful poke check by Mike Smith.
Nicholas Hjalmarsson got away with a pretty obvious high stick on Kyle Chipchura in front of the net, and that seemed to give the Coyotes just enough more oomph to tie the game.
And not only securing a playoff spot.
Klesla fires, he scores! Rostislav Klesla ties the game at 1.
Klesla, if you remember, had a golden opportunity right up the gut to score a minute or two earlier, and he earned a measure of redemption with a shot that just beats Crawford. It didn't matter.
And for a lead gives the Blackhawks a 2-1 lead. Chicago comes right back. Just 33 seconds after the Klesla goal.
Okay, it might be easy to fault the Coyotes D for letting everything get by them on this play, but that backhand flip from Frolik is just stupid. It could barely have been placed any better. That's the kind of frustrating goal only the best kinds of players can erase, such as Hall of Fame hopefuls.
Coyotes back into the Blackhawks zone. Here's Whitney. 30 seconds to go in the coincidental minor penalties. 2 goals scored during this 4-on-4, and now a third as Whitney ties the game at 2.
As he enters the zone, Jonathan Taves squares up to the Wizard. Big mistake, have some respect. Whitney takes the body to drop the puck to a rushing Klesla, and Taves just gives up on the play, but the Wizard doesn't, and he's got the entire state of Arizona to skate through and pop that rebound into the open net. So that was exciting. 3 goals in the amount of time it takes to floss. And once again, we are barreling towards the end of regulation, tied.
Now for Bada, clears 3.5. Remaining here in regulation. Rolling slowly across the goal line, Letty to touch. It's an icing call against the Coyotes with 2:33 on the clock. Puck play by Seabrook, a minute 25 to go. Now an opportunity for Torres, down the right wing. Dropping it off for Lankow. Picked off in front by Sharp. 3-on-2, 5 seconds to go. Here's Taves for Stallberg. Hit by Doan. Sharp with a drive and a blocker saved by Smith.
It was only the 5th time in NHL history where the first 3 games of a series went to overtime. Shots were 31 apiece in regulation, as if further indication was needed that almost nothing was separating these two squads.
Into the slot, shot saved by Smith on Stallberg.
The even shot totals were just begging for one extra shot from a team to be the game winner.
Here's Whitney with speed down the right wing. Whitney across, plus the fires, and that is blocked by Seabrook. 2 Blackhawks back as Pyatt shoots in. Pyatt and Hjalmarsson. Butker on the puck. Tough angle shot. He scores! The Coyotes win game 3 in overtime, 3-2.
Oh man, as good as Corey Crawford was in this game, that goal is one that has some real odor on it. I still can't tell how it went in. Crawford definitely doesn't have the post fully sealed, but the puck is like 4 inches off the ground, and it looked like it should have just hit him in his pad. But that's what happens when you have Ray Whitney on your team. You start to score magic goals purely through osmosis. Obviously, the talk of the town and of the NHL in general was another Raffi Torres hit on an unsuspecting player. Believe it or not, this is the second bad hit by Torres on a Blackhawk in the past 12 months. In Game 3 against Chicago the prior year, as a member of the Canucks, Torres hit Brent Seabrook high before he even touched the puck. Textbook interference, not to mention the head contact. If he'd waited half a second longer and hit Seabrook half a foot more up ice, it might be clean, but he didn't do either. And one thing I want to make clear, amongst the totality of hockey players, even the most fringe NHL players can make every decision in a microsecond. It's one of those things that makes hockey the sport it is, and those athletes, who they are, they can make those decisions at that speed. So when you or I see a hit like this and may feel, well, it was an instantaneous decision, it isn't for them. In suspendable hits, there's usually enough time for players to let up to varying degrees. With Raffi Torres, we repeatedly failed to see that happen. And it's players like Marian Hossa that paid the biggest price. Hossa would not return to the series. Brandon Saad, 19 years old at the time, would take his roster spot on the wing. Torres would be suspended 25 games. It was already the 8th suspension doled out in the first round of the playoffs that year. There would be another 4 coming. But no suspension that year even came close to the penalty that Raffi Torres brought upon himself. The Blackhawks offense had mustered an average of 44 shots per game on Mike Smith, and in the early goings, it looked like that peppering would continue.
2 off the body, knocked down. Dave Boland's chance is stopped. Mike Smith early on David Boland. Now Bickle to the corner. Boland off the paddle of Smith. Laid at the Phoenix defense. Boland one more time. Keith with a shot that rockets wide. Marcus Kruger takes the hit, makes the play. Patrick Sharp looking for Kane. A chance, stopped again. Lay it off for Duncan Keith. From the wall, Sharp. Keith. Hit goes high off a stick.
Although the Blackhawks really shot themselves in the foot when they decided, or at least Brandon Bollig decided, to get in a fight, instead of keep the offensive pressure up. I don't think Bollig landed a single good punch. Maybe a pop or two, but I give it to Bissonnette. Along with the larger win that Chicago's momentum was now completely arrested. The downside for the Coyotes is that because Bissonnette's jersey wasn't tied down, he got a game misconduct. So now the Coyotes were down Hansel, Korpikoski, Torres, and Bissonnette. All forwards.
It goes by Brendan Morrison, Jonathan Taves with a shot stop.
Despite not having too much to do in the first, Crawford was still sharp in the second when the chances came his way.
Johnny Oduya with a nice pickup, but he coughed it up. O'Coin's shot denied, and a good stick by Chalmerson.
The same could be said, as usual, for Mike Smith.
Victor Stolberg with a shot seen by Smith twice. Brendan Morrison had the rebound. Stolberg gets room. Victor Stolberg shot swallowed by Mike Smith.
It's basically 3 forwards against 5 guys.
Now it's played by Seabrook, broken up by Verbata. Here come the Coyotes. Ray Ritchie's in. Great save by Crawford. Wow. Block. Frolik is away. He has great speed. Michael Frolik stopped by Smith. It trickles in, but it was blown dead.
The refs, who were pretty bad in this game, missing calls such as this obvious trip from Boyd Gordon, gifted the Blackhawks a makeup call, because nothing says good refereeing like making 2 bad calls instead of 1. The second period was largely lacking, aside from those out-of-the-blue chances. The third period would start goalless, and there weren't many chances in the beginning of the third either.
For Chicago.
It was the only time to this point in the series we'd gone a long way without at least some real good looks.
Lots of different line combinations from Joel Quenneville.
A pickpocketing move by Shane Doan. Here's a chance. Crawford, a dandy Doan scores! Shane Doan on the spot, and Phoenix breaks the ice.
This goal is all Shane Doan. The full sprint backcheck on Johnny Oduya, the perfect strip sack, and he gets rewarded for making it all happen by having Whitney's rebound come right to him, and he 360s it in. Frame that play next to your grandma's urn. And from the veteran's example comes the success of his fellow men.
Coming into this game, he has the game's only goal. Vermette out in front, they score! Taylor Pyatt
Getting a beautiful pass from Antoine Vermette, and Phoenix with a 2-goal lead. It's their forecheck again.
Taylor Pyatt pokes the puck away from the D on the half-boards, and once Verbata advances it, he does what everyone should do and just guns it to the net. And yeah, maybe that's a sweep check that Seabrook really should have connected with, but let's not downplay how well Pyatt had been playing this series. Or Vermette, for that matter. Coyotes had earned the series' first 2-goal lead. But the last thing you could do to the early 2010 Blackhawks was count them out.
Some man, Brendan Morrison, his shot scored! Brendan Morrison ignites Chicago.
Well, Brendan Morrison can deflect pucks off Rusty Klesla as often as he wants, but the Coyotes were up by 2, which hadn't happened before, which means they're not going to overtime, which means they're not going to lose. Right?
Now Brian Bickle has room. Shot taken off the shoulder of Smith. Emerson off the boards and out. Taves moving up. Jonathan Taves with a shot. Good save by Smith. Olin. Another block for Lee. Stopped by Smith. And Bickle hit the goal post. Crawford on his way out. Oduya to the corner. Bolin dangling. Shooting one. Stopped. It's loose. They score!
There was just too much time left on the clock. Dave Bolin showed some soft hands to get that puck to the backhand, and as happens so often in the playoffs, the puck just squirted right to a benefactor after the net mouth scramble.
To overtime. 4 straight in this series.
The stakes if you lose? A last mulligan for the Blackhawks. For the Coyotes, a series tie, despite entering the final 2 minutes of 3 of 4 games with the lead. Didn't happen.
Patrick Sharp on the forecheck. He digs it out. He centers one. Off Yandel. Hack and whack time. Smith had it. It's loose and forked wide. O'Donnell coming up. Now Yandel. Chipped out of the zone by Boyd Gordon. Mikhail Bakker with a chance. He walks in. He scores! Mikhail Bakker for the second straight game is the hero. And Phoenix has a commanding 3-1 lead in this best-of-7 series.
If you watch this puck, Mikhail Bodker doesn't touch it for about 20 feet all the way to the net. That is the second straight game where Crawford lets an easy one get by him in overtime. It certainly doesn't help his showing when Mike Smith is playing the way he was. The Blackhawks have had the edge thus far, and they've outshot the Coyotes in every game. It wasn't a curb stomp, but the Blackhawks were definitely just playing better. Mike Smith remained the only puzzle needing solving. And the Hawks scorers needed that solution now, facing elimination. The Coyotes, on the other hand, couldn't care less. Smith had shut down the Hawks' potent offense and reduced it to almost nothing. They could score on Corey Crawford seemingly without trying. And if they were 1 win away from their very first series win as an Arizona franchise, all the better. Either the Coyotes' history or the Blackhawks' bad luck had to give. Lori Korpikoski would return to the lineup for the Yotes in Game 5. Backs to the wall, the Hawks pushed early.
Looking to shoot one, but it's partially deflected. Hackey's in front of shot. Oh, big save by Smith. Stallberg able to get a piece of it.
After Phoenix gets the puck just inside their own blue line.
Taves a shot. And a save by Smith. It's loose, but he's able to locate.
But after that early juice, the game fell into some meat and potatoes tepidness. It was pretty tough to watch. Almost nothing happened for the entire first period. Oh well, it makes my job easier, I guess. It must have been hell for the goalies, but they weren't too out of it to bail their teams out.
Korpikoski in with Bodker. Here's the shot. Crawford, his best save of the game.
But a second break in short order was enough to dent the scoreboard.
Have a break. Here goes Yandel. He's up the ice. Brule right to the net. He scored. That was a 2-on-0. Yeah, the Hawks are activating the D, but they got caught that time.
Nicholas Hjalmarsson pinched down the left half boards, presumably to start a cycle with Jimmy Hayes. But Hayes swept it in front of the net to the right, and it doesn't go to anyone, and there's only one Chicago defender up high, Sammy Lepisto, to stop the onslaught. And the Coyotes almost materialized a second goal out of sheer willpower.
Stuff attempt by Doan.
Just like that, the ice opened up.
Held in. And out of the corner, Bowman, 4-throw leak. Here's the shot. Big save by Smith. His first test of period 2, and he passed it beautifully. Lepisto missed it. Diptura did not. Here's a shot and a save by Crawford. Great chance. Pouliot And now it hold in. Ekman Larsson's kicked away Crawford. Now a centering attempt wide open. Here's a shot. Crawford, big save on Rosenthal, who was wide open coming for the point. Here's Whitney. And Crawford got a piece of that. Chicago penalty coming up.
Despite that, though, there'd be no further red lights in the second. Again, the third period opened with the smallest of separations gracing the scoreboard. For whatever reason, the Coyotes started the third period seemingly much tamer than their usual selves, relying more on counterpunching than generating sustained offense.
Shot blocked. Good play, Leddy. And a penalty, Blackhawks, is Oduya. Or I should say, no, it's not Victor. Yeah. The fourth penalty of the game for Victor Stahlberg.
Neither Stahlberg nor the Blackhawks would get burned, but time was still running short on their season, and a dreadful power play getting another look wasn't much of a consolation.
In by Keith. Kruger centered. It goes to Leddy. Here it comes. Smith soaks it up. No rebound. Helped by Frolik. He dropped it back. Here's a long shot by Leddy. Tipped to score! A redirect out in front of the net. A long one from Nick Leddy was tipped, and the Blackhawks midway in the third have the equalizer.
I get why Mike Smith is upset at this goal. Firstly, Adrian Aucoin loses his man who provides a moving screen, then it deflects off his shin, but his mask also gets bopped inadvertently by said screen, David Boland. When the puck is almost halfway to the net, Smith is without a care in the world, and then it all went so wrong. Tie game. It seems like most of the goals that have beat Mike Smith in this series have either been deflections or because of bad turnovers. In other words, things that weren't his fault. As yet another overtime inched closer, both teams played more and more conservatively, which benefited neither, as the Coyotes could have landed the knockout blow, and the Blackhawks were trying to extend their season.
Got in too deep. Who was in a prone position. Back out to Keith. He put it across to Leddy. Here it comes. Smith. Oh, what a save. It's loose again. Bickle. Bickle back to Leddy. Smith down. And Leddy put it over the crossbar.
If you remember the end of Game 6 in Playoffs Pass 3, it was a slog just to get to overtime. The third period was just some ugly hockey. And this game was largely the same. But we would still get overtime. The fifth straight such game. You'd have to go back to 1951 to find an identical series. But maybe that's how the Coyotes' first ever playoff series win was going to materialize. Even if it wasn't a long series, it would at least be a close one, and in front of the Glendale fans that had waited nearly 20 years for a playoff series win. But the Blackhawks dynasty had barely started, and they had something to say about the Coyotes stealing their thunder.
Came off the boards, he shoots, he scores! Down to the Taves! A face-off win! A game-winning goal! The Hawks live to fight another day!
Wouldn't you know it?
The Blackhawks' 5-on-5 expected goals for percentage in Game 5 was 67.14, a series high, but they'd still only managed 2 goals on 30-odd shots. Despite the W and extending their season, Mike Smith was still a problem. Finally, some good news though. Both Martin Hanzal and Andrew Shaw would return for Game 6, the former from injury and the latter from suspension. I'm sure they were eager, but maybe less so for the prospect of yet another heart-stopping overtime, which both the players and the fans had no reason to expect wouldn't happen for a 6th straight game. The Coyotes would play with a shortened bench again, as Rusty Klesla would be down early, having been accidentally speared in the eye by Brendan Morrison's errant stick. 5 defensemen for the Coyotes. On top of necessitating that their season continue, the Blackhawks had no excuses to not capitalize, and they tried their hearts out. Shots were 8-0 Blackhawks before the game was 3 minutes old.
Here's a chance in front. Smith down, and he has 2 more. On Schlepko, he'll go back to get it. Nicola now with Frolik. Here's Michael Frolik, a shot. Number 5, rebound roll.
Penalty from Ekman Larsson, and back come the Hawks now. Kane and Shaw. Half for Shaw. What a stop by Smith. He slid across and he took it away.
2/3 of the way into the opening frame, the Blackhawks did not allow the Coyotes sustained pressure once. 2 fruitless power plays completely killed the Blackhawks' momentum. But it wasn't the Blackhawks' fault the scoreboard hadn't been dented. Mike Smith was an absolute wall. He made 16 saves to Crawford's 2 in the first. Pretty soon, though, 16 would be far in the rear view.
Now, a little room for Stallberg on the tape change, cuts it in, what a move! And Smith is able to close the pads.
And there you see Rusty Klesla back on the bench right beside me.
He's ahead for Stallberg up the right side. Sends it across lane end, coming to Tim Terry. Oh, what a stop! Are you kidding me? The Morrison with the left pad. Are you kidding me? What a setup.
It was halfway through the game, and every single highlight had been of Mike Smith. He wasn't just playing, he was weaving the strokes of a masterpiece. An interference penalty on Jonathan Toews gave the Coyotes just the window they needed to remind the Blackhawks that they could play.
Ekman-Larsson again scores! Oliver Ekman-Larsson with the blast, and a power play goal gives the Coyotes the lead.
Not to dogpile on Crawford, but when Mike Smith is at the other end of the ice having a game that would be any lesser goalie's life accomplishment, you gotta stop that one. For their part, the Chicago offense continued to run rings around the Coyotes, but still they just couldn't solve Smith, or some clutch defensive plays from Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Stallberg back in, nearly caught them, Toews across, want to be sent back, Keith Vance on it. It's the Hawks puck, and the Coyotes aren't allowed to play with it right now.
Despite a late period power play, the Hawks couldn't get anything going, and all of a sudden, they only had 20 minutes left to extend their season. On the other glove, Phoenix was 1 period away from their first ever series win, but it seemed more likely than either outcome that we'd just get another overtime.
There as it was held in, and now Chip Chura behind the net, centers, Brûlé scores! Gilbert Brûlé has his second in as many games, and it's 2-0 Phoenix.
Gilbert Brûlé, famously Carey Price's draft neighbor, was shadowed by Brian Bickle all the way to the paint, but Bickle never really tied up his stick. It was such an easy defensive play to make, but he timed his intervention incorrectly, and the series had only its second 2-goal lead right there. Like the ticker says, the Coyotes were phenomenal when having a second period lead in the regular season. The Blackhawks knew better than most that the postseason was an altogether different beast, but so was Mike Smith.
In front, Smith down! The first shot blocked, the rebound stopped by Smith. Almost had a shorthanded break, and now 2-on-1. Duncan Keith's in, and a backhand stop by Smith.
Halfway through the third, Jimmy Hayes boarded Michael Roosevelt, who isn't exactly known for being the best actor, but it was pretty clearly a board. It was called 5 and a Game by Wes McCauley. The Coyotes did almost nothing with it. Almost.
Penalty of a lap. Bodker in, a pad stop there. But we're now down to 7 minutes left in the third period. Shot knocked down. Bodker, rebound, scores! And it is 3-0 on a power play goal by Antoine Vermette.
The Hawks were down by 3, and the Major had eaten the clock down to just under 7 minutes. Was that enough time to crack 2012 Mike Smith 3 times? Well, no, because soon, the gap wasn't 3 goals.
Again, another chance and another goal. Kyle Chipchura. It's a fourth-line goal once again for the Phoenix Coyotes.
With the win all but guaranteed, all that remained to acquire was a shutout for Mike Smith.
There's another Smith stop, his first career playoff shutout, and out of the desert and into the second round, the Phoenix Coyotes.
Game and series to him and the Coyotes. Their first ever Stanley Cup playoff victory. Watching this series was a very unique experience. The longer it went on, the more and more strange I felt. There was nastiness, but it wasn't the exhilarating kind, the kind that swells your chest because you're seeing 2 armies warring with each other for the prize of glory. It wasn't fun. It was sad. Because no matter which way you look at it, there's a pall cast over this series. There were the 10 odd suspensions hanging over this year, and then that boogeyman finally came to haunt these teams. There was a palpable disgust for the referees and the feeling that they'd cost either team a game, making some wins feel a little cheap. There's the then unknown heinous cover-up of a heinous crime by practically everyone in the Blackhawks leadership that won't ever go away. There's the shadow of death because more than one actor in this saga is no longer with us, taken far too soon. And yet there they are, alive and well, 12 short years ago. It's all just so ghastly, so dire and harrowing. And finally, the Coyotes themselves are gone. They've committed to relocation after a long and pain-fraught existence in the desert. This wasn't the furthest they got, but it was the one brightest moment for a team that seldom had such things to cheer about. But they did have this. They will always have this. As long as there are mouths to speak their names and minds to remember them, someone's heart will always beat for the desert. Thank you to all of my patrons, every last one of you, especially Jacob Keefe, Infernos Gaming, Steely Dan 32, Stuckmund, Sky Shiver, Pylon Zin, Ethan Johnson, Amazing Kook 143, and Eric Sheldon.
Tree to go in the third period.